Welcome to anybody who's watching, obviously. Thank you for coming along. My name's Ed Mead. I'm the founder of Viewber. Hopefully those watching are interested enough to click on this because they know who Richard and I are. Richard needs little introduction as a very well-known trainer to the estate agency profession. Thank you for coming along, Richard. I'll be blunt. I asked Richard why some estate agents have been rather slower than we would have anticipated in taking up Viewber and the services that Viewber provides. We've been very successful in other areas, in property management, block management, auctions, some of the online services, and particularly for investors and investor reports and that sort of thing. But the big area out there, and the reason I set up Viewber in the first place, was to try and serve as estate agents. So I emailed Rich the other day and said, look, why do you think, what is it that you think? Because I know we spoke, crikey, 3-4 years ago when I came on one of your tours when the idea first came up for Viewber, and you thought it was a good idea, which was great. We've had very little interaction since. I've seen you at various seminars.
I didn't think it was a good idea initially, actually, by the way. For the first few seconds, I thought, hold on, but we'll come on to that.
Okay, so what I thought I'd do is, rather than waffling on now, is just ask you some straightforward questions.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, let's deal with that one first. What were your initial thoughts about Viewber showing people ran houses on behalf of other agents?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, where I'm coming from as a trainer, it's quality and everything goes with great agency and all about managing the agent's reputation and really shining and doing the best you can and using innovation and the most effective techniques and all this, that, and the other. To suddenly rip that away and put somebody who's not trained to do any of the stuff that agents do in front of buyer and seller, I thought, my goodness me, isn't this going to somehow undermine the reputation of that agency? As I said, I had that thought for a few seconds. The brain is going a bit slower nowadays, and it took me about maybe 9 or 10 seconds to realize, hold on a second, let's look at this the other way around. And it kind of began to make a load of sense. And actually, as time goes on, I'm seeing what you've been doing, it increasingly makes a lot of sense. And I can understand the agents who think, well, hold on, I've trained up my agents. I've got good negotiators. They're good salespeople in the field. Those are the people that I want in front of my buyers, and particularly in front of sellers when they go around a property. And I completely get that. But you know what? Someone the other day, I was at a dinner party and they asked me what I did, and I said, I train estate agents. And they said, oh, there can't be much to that then, can they? Just say, open the room and say, this is the bathroom. And I said, that's almost one bit I don't do. Well, I do, but there's not much to say, is there? I don't think, and in all my years, and yours probably too, Ed, in agency, probably totally about 70 years between us, I can't really remember any one instance where anything I have said to a buyer at a property really has been instrumental in causing them to buy it if they would not have otherwise done so. I suspect there's very little an agent in the field can actually do without making themselves look a bit stupid. I mean, what do you say? I mean, it's a visual thing. You need to look, and that's why virtual tours have become so effective over lockdown, though you still would actually see it, of course, to get a feel for it. But I don't think there's a great deal that agent can say there. What I'd rather have is my agents on the phone making appointments and getting people around. Now, we don't want the vendor to show the properties, we know that. But the reason why I think Viewber's work so well is because the buyer doesn't feel threatened or pressurized. They're not being sold to. I mean, who would you rather buy through? Someone who's like your auntie who lives down the road, who says, oh, I know these people, let me show you around. Or some salesy agent who's trying apparently to get you to buy something that it's too big a purchase. I'll decide.
What would you say, Richard, to the people that would say, and certainly some of the big corporates do say to me, but that buyer is an opportunity for us to sell a mortgage, a conveyancing service, and insurance service?
Absolutely. Well, I tell you one thing, if agents are just devolving everything onto a Viewber, then they're missing a trick. Because I would say that actually you should be regarding your buyers as valuable for cross-selling and all the other reasons we know, and property to sell in exactly the same way. It's just the actual viewings. In fact, you may well be doing viewings with them. This is for when you physically haven't got the manpower or they're furloughed or something. You've got to keep those numbers up. And people say to me, is it a quantity or a quality game? They're expecting me to say quality. But I would actually say, ultimately, if I had to decide between the two, it's quantity. The more buyers you get around, the more properties, the more sales you will do. End of story. But it does not mean that your agents are not looking after those buyers with kid gloves. They're phoning them before. They say, you'll be meeting my colleague, who's the Viewber representative. After you've seen it, I'll give you a buzz and I'll find out how it went and we'll have a chat. And that gives, in a way, it's almost better because the buyer can then explain to the agent what they thought about the property, rather than the agent having to assess their ums and ahs at the property itself. So it's quite a good reason to get feedback in building that relationship and doing those cross-selling things. So
what would you say then to the agents who say that they feel that they risk their sellers saying they're being shortchanged by not having a member of staff turning up to do the viewing?
I've heard that, and again, that's a perfectly reasonable question. I think it's a matter of how you manage your sellers. I think if I've always gone down the route that actually, and particularly for sort of smaller or independent agents, the person who sells them the business, the person who takes the instruction, the seller's probably giving you the instruction because they like the individual. It's the main reason why they're giving the instruction. So they're almost expecting that individual to do the viewings as well. So just as in the same way that listing agent says, my colleague David and Susie will be bringing people around, in the same way we'll be saying, look, our job is to get loads of people around your property. Our guys are very good on the phone at arranging viewings and following up leads and this sort of thing. Sometimes we get overwhelmed, and if that is the case, we've got an outsourcing service called Viewber, a very respected organization, thousands of people around the country, and in that case we don't want to miss a viewing, but we'll have one of those people around, and they're really there just to let them in and for security. And at the end of the day, what will happen is but one of our agents will call that person up and help them, encourage them to make a decision about their property. So it really means we're able to get more people around your property. It is a numbers game.
Yeah, I think it is a numbers game. And I certainly think part of the thing we look at is the buyer demographic as they get younger, in terms of buyers wanting things when they want it rather than when the estate agents want it.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that a little bit later. So for a lot of agents, I think, that we speak to, they've already got the fixed costs of viewing built into their cost base at the moment. So they already have the negotiators there at the moment. So when we talk to them, they look at this as being an extra cost. So how would you, if you were talking to an agent, or do you, at the moment, agents, as I say, tend to look at this as just an extra layer of cost? Do you think that's a fair way of looking at it?
Well, anything that costs money is a fair way of looking at it, and you need to decide, is this cost a cost that's worth investing in? But I would say that if you're at a stage where having viewers working for you at the touch of a button can increase your productivity, then you need that cost in a way, because what it means is you're I often used to say to people when they were building brands and building branches, they say, should I employ another person? I say, wait until you're absolutely stretched and bursting at the seams. When you know you need another person, that's the time to employ somebody. So that's the time perhaps when you're going to be hiring viewers as an alternative to even thinking about hiring another agent at this stage. It fills in the gaps and it enables you to do more. So I'd say it's a good cost. Do you need to pay for a telephone? You can't see the return on telephone, but I know I need a telephone and I'll pay for the telephone.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a frustrating journey. So I really am wanting you to look at this from an agent's perspective, because that's what you do, is talk to agents and give them nuggets. I mean, I was fascinated, by the way, to see your latest video, which came through. I'm on your mailing list. And for years, when I was an agent, I would have said 20% of the business we used to do, by the way, was for buyers.
Oh, the buyer representation.
Yeah, the buyer representation.
Yeah.
I do think that that's a fascinating idea for people to weave into their business, because they probably haven't thought of that at all.
It's the other side of the coin. It's right there for the taking. Yeah.
Well, it is. And as you say, all the infrastructure is there already, so there's no cost attached to doing it. So the idea that buyers would want someone to help them out, particularly local, someone who knows an agent locally. We used to do that at Douglas and Gordon all the time. And it was definitely a big. So I think that's great. But it does lead, funnily enough, it's all part of what we're talking about here, because do you think that the training, I mean, obviously from a Viewber perspective, we have an in-house academy, so our guys get trained, they can upskill themselves into various new things. Do you think agents worry about who it is that is being the Viewber? Do you think they worry about having, who the Viewber is?
Well, probably comes down to your own systems and credibility. And I've only really heard good things. In fact, I was quite surprised to hear you say that there's been more resistance than you might have expected, because I hear hundreds of agents saying, oh, we just use Viewber for our excess viewings. It's great. It means we can do more numbers. Sorry, what was the question?
Well, no, I'm just interested to hear what your definition of the best Viewber would be.
Yeah.
Do you think all Viewbers should be sharp-suited 25?
No, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. People don't like estate agents, sadly, because they're nice people. But you know, if you think about it, if you're looking at a property, put yourself in the mindset of a buyer. And we've bought and sold many times over the years. And in the mindset of a buyer, all I'm interested in is seeing a property that I think might be suitable. I'll make this, my wife and I, Charlotte and I, will make the decision whether we like it or not. I really don't think we can be that influenced by what the person says. So what I'd ideally want is somebody who's going to let me in, let me have a look around, maybe just show me what's what and say there's an annex down there and that's fine. But don't confuse me. Don't try and sell to me. This is too big a thing. I'm not buying a photocopy or a phone or something. This is too big a thing and there's a much more emotional part to it. So the sort of person that for me would make an ideal Viewber is probably going to be a pleasant, middle-aged, maybe non-pushy, male, female, black, white, anybody who is perhaps a local person who is pleasant and trustworthy and non-pushy and mildly mannered, and just the sort of person, you'd say, thank you for that. And then the agent can pick up the phone and speak to the buyer afterwards and be perhaps a little bit more persuasive, not just in getting them to buy that property, because I don't think you really can, but more persuasive in helping them in encouraging other viewings. Numbers.
Yeah. I mean, certainly from our point of view, the average age is 53, and they tend to be female. So that would probably buy into the sort of image that you're talking about there, and of course being local, they know what's going on. But actually, one of the main reasons when we started, I expected this to happen, is it'll be no coincidence that if anybody here has ever been, and there are probably very few, sadly, it's only happened to me once or twice, I've been able to afford to buy a property through either Savills or Knight Frank. But their workforce out in the field, if you ever go and see one of their properties, particularly outside London, the chances are you'll get a well-qualified local farmer's wife or one of these people will turn up and show it to you, rather than being one of the staff. So it clearly does work if outfits like that use it. I mean,
the great thing is, you know what, if you've got a question, I've never analysed this, but if you look at the types of questions that buyers might ask, it's probably not a question about the property itself, because you can usually see that. It's going to be a question about the local area. Something like, I live in Cheltenham, so I wonder is this street going to be busy during race week? And for the guy to say, well, actually, I only live around the corner myself, and most of the racegoers use this street, not this one. That's gold dust, because that's local intelligence spoken with authenticity from a credible person. So I'm absolutely all for that local person. And also the demographic may well be quite similar as well. If somebody lives locally, they're likely to be a similar sort of, maybe I'm guessing, but age and social makeup to the person that they're showing the house to. Whereas let's say in Kensington, I used to be a 19-year-old negotiator showing multi-million-pound houses to 55-year-old multi-millionaires. There was a big...
I remember those days. They were great days, though, I have to say. But one of the comments people are making at the moment or one of the assumptions people are making about the market is virtual viewings versus real viewings. Now, clearly, real viewings have their limitations during the CV-19 crisis at the moment, which I understand. And a 360 tour is at one end, which is a pre-recorded tour, which helps people get their shortlist. But one agent I spoke to a couple of weeks ago, of all the deals that they did in lockdown, all of them were predicated on a viewing before exchange, and 8 out of 10 of those deals fell through when they actually went to physically see it. So where do you stand on the virtual versus physical?
Well, you probably just answered it, actually. I mean, I was always, for a long time, quite anti-virtual tours, because I thought it was a lame excuse. It just meant that no one's going to buy it without actually seeing it for the feel of it, and it means that if you don't like what you see on the virtual tour, you're definitely not going to like it when you go there. But I suppose the same could have been said about photographs, colour photographs, when they came out. But it's interesting the stats you just quoted. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about feeling as much as anything. You can see as much as you like. You can see the photos of 3D tour, which are fantastic. But I don't think people are prepared to take the risk enough to buy a property off the back of a virtual tour. They still need to go and see the property to get the feel for it anyway. Probably they will be better buyers because they've got a very, very good idea as to what it's like. And the reason they're going there is to find a reason not to buy it in a way. And that's where an agent, will help them take them over that line possibly.
So what would you say then to agents who say to me, oh, our costs for a viewing are anywhere between 20 and 30 pounds for a basic slot, but the majority of our people tend to book 1 hour slots for say 40 quid where they can get 4 time viewing slots in. So it works out at about 10 quid per person that comes to see it. Yeah. What would you say to people that say, it looks expensive to me. I can hire a sort of school leaver or a local person for 10, 15 pounds an hour to do it.
What, reliably, just like that, on pick them up, put them down basis? I wonder how long that would last. I mean, yes, you could, I suppose, but what I'd see that investment as is I'm not paying my £10 to have a Viewber do a viewing that may or may not go somewhere. I'm paying my £10 to have my negotiator staying back, hitting the phone and making more viewings on other properties, because that's where your revenues come from, is the churn, the numbers. So I wouldn't see it as a negative investment. I'd say it's a very positive one. I'd say it's almost like it's the missing link between you've hired 2 negotiators here. You could really do with a third, but you can't justify it yet. But the Viewber in the middle is going to cost you a fraction of that third negotiator with no PAYE or any other obligations. You can pick it up today, use it today, whatever. To me, it's that sort of cost.
And look, I mean, I think the last thing I'd say, or the last thing I'd want to ask you, just in case there's anything you want to ask me before we finish, what do you say to those people? What do you say to people about Viewber when you're out there? Because you implied that several people talk to you about it. Is what you tend to hear positive? Are you surprised that more agents don't use it? And if you think that there's a reason why people aren't using it, why would you think they aren't using it?
There's so many people trying to flog so many things to estate agents at the moment. Each one of them is really good, but if you bought them all, you'd be out of business before you start. I think a lot of it is we've become a little bit overloaded with this, and particularly at the moment where agents are cutting back, if anything. Strange enough, though, Viewber is the one thing that if you're cutting back, it possibly is the one thing you need. You might have furloughed or made staff member redundant. That's because the money's not coming in, but the viewings are still up. In fact, we're seeing amazing viewings at the moment, I understand. So the timing might be quite good for that. So yeah, I say normally when it comes up in conversation, if I'm doing a training course and I say, and I'm talking about viewings and I mention Viewber, they might say, actually, yes, we're already doing that and it's working really well for us. In fact, some agents felt threatened. The negotiator said, oh, will I be out of a job? I said, of course not. Of course, it's highly complementary to your job because it enables you to do the more profitable parts of your job with greater frequency than just going and driving halfway across the country and showing a house to someone who probably won't buy it. Leave that to somebody else.
Okay, well, that probably sums it up in a nutshell, actually. So, look, I think we've probably covered, enough ground. I really appreciate your sort of honesty on this, really, because as I said, the reason for my call to you originally was I'm surprised that a lot do, but it's a huge market out there. And we all know that the average owner of an estate agency probably is going to be a bit older, probably sort of more our age, likely to be male, probably resistant to change. Yeah. And I'm guessing from your point of view that you see quite a lot of those sort of guys on your training courses. Yeah,
very, very much so, very much so. And in fact, a lot of what we discussed during this conversation are questions that I would discuss with, if I mention Viewber and they have those questions, they are quite easily answered. But also, I mean, how many Viewbers do you have across the country now? You've been
we've got 3,500 active ones. We cover every UK postcode. I tell you what I do think is extraordinary is that there are a lot of companies out there that say they're national. Oh yes, we're national, but actually they're a series of franchises. Yeah, not. Whereas what we have is a completely every UK postcode service with one point of access and one SLA. Well, that's quite unusual to be able to book something literally in Inverness, Truro, Cardiff, at the push of a button. That's really quite unusual.
Yeah. I mean, you've achieved something incredible there to get that many people on board and sort of vetted but vetting. Yeah. Well, how does that work? I mean, can they just?
It's a perfectly fair question. They're all DBS checked. We do video interviews with them all, but the most important thing is they get rated in 2 ways. Every time they do a job and they send the feedback through or the inspection report through, whoever they've sent it to rates them out of 5 stars, just like Uber. But as importantly, our internal staff rate them on their effectiveness, their the way they use their initiative, etc. etc. So they get 2 ratings, an internal and an external, and that really polices it better than anything else.
Yeah, very good, very good. And I mean, in terms of your plans going forward, what are your sort of aspirations for the company?
Well, the trouble is they've changed slightly because the COVID, the CV-19 stuff is going to be around, I think, for 12 to 18 months. It's not going to go. It's not going to go away in a hurry. So we want to be seen, and I think we've already arrived, hopefully, at a situation where we are known as the sort of de facto stepping in service for the industry.
Yeah.
But my ambition is to penetrate the estate agency market. That's where I'm from. That's what you exist in. Property management. All these other things that we service are, run of the mill is completely the wrong word, but I think we have an opportunity here to let agents move into the sort of properly into the 21st century, to be able to service their customers when they want in a cost-effective way. And it irritates me that our base viewing cost is 25 to 30 quid, which is too expensive for a lot of the high street agents, but they don't look at how they can use it more effectively.
Yeah.
What could you do with someone for 3 hours on a Saturday afternoon for 65 quid?
Absolutely.
You can do a lot of stuff with those.
It's perfect for open. I'm always banging on about open houses, have been for years, and it's amazing how few agents do them. But I used to get more instructions from open houses than anywhere else, really, just by sticking signposts on every street corner, say, come look at my open house this Saturday, blah, blah, blah. And to have somebody to man those, heck, if I could do that. The only reason, in fact, we used to do this in Cape Town, the only reason we didn't do more is we didn't have the staff. And this would have solved it instantly.
Well, what we tend to do actually for a lot of our open houses is do them with the customer. So the agent sends along a neg. Our Viewber simply watches the house or watches the property and makes sure everything's going okay, whilst the estate agent then can go around talking to everyone, getting names, addresses, where do you live, have you sold, what's your situation, without worrying about the security of the house. So there are lots of ways in which, and I just think it's been great to be able to air some of those, Richard, with you, some of these things. So thank you very much. I mean, as I said, the main reason I'm talking to you is because you're a respected guy in the industry and you represent a lot of agents. So if there was a real hole in this somewhere, I know you well enough for you to say, well, actually, you're not dealing with this.
Haven't found one yet. I haven't heard any instances of where it went wrong. You must have some. You're probably not going to share them, but so far so good.
Yeah, I mean, we have less than a 0.5% mess up rate, which probably is actually better than I used to have at Douglas and Gordon.
Me too.
That's probably another story entirely. So look, Richard, thanks very much. I am fascinated by what you're doing on the buyer's side, and I think in the existing situation, I very much hope that people watching this will also go and check out what Richard's doing.
Yeah, do check out the that'll take you through the website, and there's a little video.
Wherever it is.
Little video there about the buyer representation opportunity and how to actually incorporate it into your regular estate agency. It's not what you think. It's not what you think. And it's highly, you can double your revenues in a shorter period of time than rebuilding that pipeline that you had before the pandemic.
It's there for immediate use.
Yeah.
Okay, Richard, thank you very much. Appreciate you taking the time out of your day. Thank you.
All right, Ed, no problem. Take care. Bye.